Hey everybody, it's Mark Schultz here, and we are live with another edition of Recovery in Aviation. I'm here with my co-host, Larry Little. Good morning, Larry. How are you today?
Hey, Mark. Hey, Mark. Good to be with you again. 0500 here in Seattle. Good to be with you again on our continuing discussion of recovery in aviation.
Yeah, I know. You'd probably be out rather flying your airplane this morning, though, right?
I would, but I think we got a cloud cover around 500 feet today. So.
All right. Okay. So it looks like you'll be on the ground today. But hey, we're here with a discussion of LinkedIn Live, of recovery in aviation. And our purpose for having these discussions is to be able to engage with leaders in the industry and have live interviews with question and answer sessions about how we can drive recovery in aviation. So I'm here with my co-host Larry and I. We like to focus on that. And Larry, you always like to tell everybody the purpose for why we do that.
Well, Mark, there's so much news going on, and we read so much. I guess you could just say bad press, if you will, that we try to focus on looking forward and what can we as leaders do to really change the shape of the curve that's being predicted, that we get people back flying again, and we get and we're all part of moving the industry ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we really want to focus on what we can do and how we can engage, in aviation and how we can help to drive the recovery in aviation. And as part of doing that, we bring to you guests, live guests, so that we can do some Q&A. Hey, but before I jump in and introduce our guests, I want to tell you that, remember, this broadcast is live. You will have an opportunity during the broadcast to be able to ask questions, and we will bring those questions up and we will be able to answer them live. And you can do that right down in the comment field. And so if you have questions during the program, put your questions in. We're going to answer them live. Next, if I could ask you to share this broadcast, it's live. It helps get distribution. I see we got a lot of people that are joining. It looks like, from all sorts of different places around the world right now. And so I'm really pleased that we have such a good audience this morning. And if you'd help us out by sharing this broadcast, I would really appreciate it. All right, let's get going, Larry.
Great. Let's go, Mark.
Hey, let's introduce our special guests here today. And we have two guests with us today from Oslo, Norway, and with a company called AFRY. We have Henrik Fjeld and we have Oddvar Riksheim. Good afternoon, gentlemen. How are you?
Morning. Fine.
Fine. Thank you.
Excellent. I'm really glad to have you with us. Hey, let me just kick this off so that people kind of can understand who AFRY is and who you are. Henrik, can you tell us a little bit about who AFRY is and what your role and responsibility is with the company?
Yeah, AFRY is a Swedish engineering consultancy company. It was founded in 1895 in Sweden. And since then, we have accumulated offices around 50 countries around the world, and we are totally 17,000 employees.
Now, I know AFRY has been around for a long time, and a lot of people, if they go look online, they see they do a lot of things in civil engineering. So they also have an aviation consultancy.
Yeah, the aviation consultancy was actually acquired in November 2019, and it was actually also a Swedish company that was merged into AFRY. The company was called Serino, and it was 35 consultancies within aviation and transport, and those have been now merged into AFRY.
Yeah, it's really an amazing company. They really do a lot of different things. It's great. Now, you are based where yourself?
We are based in Oslo. So we have our main HQ in Oslo.
In Oslo, okay. And but the headquarters for AFRY is located where?
That's in Sweden, Stockholm.
In Stockholm, excellent. Well, it's so good to have you guys with us this morning. Let me jump over to Oddvar. Oddvar, can you tell us what your experience is or what your responsibilities are at AFRY?
I'm working as a senior engineer here and also a consultant. And I will be working together with Henrik in Aviation Advisory and have different assignments in that area.
Excellent. Now, Larry, I think you and Oddvar knew each other at Norwegian, didn't you?
Yeah, actually, I had the opportunity when I was with Boeing. I had the opportunity to work with Oddvar on some digital transformation things that they were implementing there at Norwegian.
That's great. Oddvar, what did you do when you were at Norwegian?
Well, I had different roles, mostly in engineering as engineering manager, technical director in periods and so on. And was actually working together with Boeing and Larry when we introduced the toolbox in maintenance toolbox in Norwegian.
That's great. I know that I had my own self. I had some opportunity to be able to work with Norwegian and some of the other airlines in that region. And so anyway, let's jump to some thoughts about what's happening there in the region right now. Now I know that there's been a really big impact on aviation worldwide. But one of the things that we're definitely seeing right now is we are seeing an increase or an uptick in activity in the EU right now. Larry, you brought this particular subject to my attention here with Finnair, right?
Yeah, Mark, we've been doing this for about 6 weeks, and it just seems like every week there's more momentum about airlines flying. And I really think in June and July, airlines across the world are going to be flying. This is from Finnair, just their traffic really increasing. And,
Mark, I understand on this slide. Thanks for showing this slide, by the way.
Yeah.
The thing that's significant about this slide is that line that says long haul network. So this means, flying internationally again, which is really great to see Lufthansa looking forward to flying internationally again.
Hey, for the two of you based in Oslo, is that what are you seeing happening right now in your area with respect to aviation? Are you seeing any changes or improvements or growth? What's happening right now in Oslo or in Scandinavia with aviation?
Well, we have the three major players in Scandinavia, which is SES, Norwegian, and Widerøe, which is the last one is the regional airline, the largest in the Nordics. For SES, there has been some news now that they're ramping up, starting to fly even internationally to New York, and the rest is mainly domestic. Norwegian is flying with a 7-8 aircraft domestically only. Widerøe is actually announced that they will set up some new routes. I think it was like 8 routes from south to north in Norway, because they expect that it will be increased demand for domestic travel due to the uncertainty about traveling abroad at the time being.
Yeah, so Larry, you were bringing up, some of the long haul activity that we were seeing from like Lufthansa, and Oddvar, you're talking right now about there being hopefully some increased, regional or domestic activity. Are you seeing more increase in domestic activity in Scandinavia right now than you are long haul? Henrik, are you seeing any impact to that right now?
No, we haven't seen that, but we see that, first of all, the domestic market would probably be the first market that will increase its capacity and volume rather than the international flights. That's what we have seen.
Yeah, and Larry, you grabbed this slide here. You said this was Transavia, right?
Yeah, Mark, I just kind of wanted to throw this one out to see Transavia back flying again. But they've been grounded since February, or I think since March, but to see them last week to begin flying again. And I think, we see the flight attendant there with a mask on is just the new reality of flying.
Yeah. Well, definitely. We're seeing some changes out there right now, but the most amazing and exciting thing is that we're seeing improvements, all right? Like Larry said, is that every single day we go into the news and we see this airline is increasing this route. So we're starting to fly in June. We're starting to fly in July. We've seen some traffic internationally. Now, look, we're nowhere near where we need to be, in the industry for a full recovery. But, recovery comes one step at a time, and we're absolutely seeing improvement in recovery right now. And so we are very enthusiastic about being able to engage in conversations like this because of the growth and the changes that we're seeing. So I want to shift from talking about what's happening in the area or in the region to go, have some specific discussions about AFRY and really what you're doing. So, Henrik, let me direct a couple of these questions now, starting, coming to you. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing in aviation consultancy, and what is one of your areas where you start with as far as helping people to engage in recovery? What is it that you do for people that you do consulting with?
First of all, AFRY Aviation Advisory consists of highly skilled engineering consultants that has a broad experience from various positions in different airlines. So they come up with a broad experience. What we tend to do is that we tend to go into potential clients and look at potential pain spots in terms of how they're organized, how the processes are developed, how well their maintenance are being done, and look at the cross-functional perspective. That's what we do. We go in and we look at the totality of their operation.
Now, Henrik, you explained to me, one of our earlier discussions that you have this concept of maintenance excellence. All right, what is that? What do you mean when you say maintenance excellence?
But our definition is probably numerous definitions, but the definition is to perform maintenance to the lowest possible cost while improving operational efficiency without impairing safety, of course, asset reliability, and of course compliance performance. That's what we have as a definition when it comes to maintenance excellence.
Yeah, Larry, when you and I have talked about digital transformation for a long time, we've kind of identified, for ourselves that we focus on 4 different pillars of digital transformation. And Henrik, you had your own way of expressing that, and you told me in one of our first meetings that it was PTO. Can you tell us what is PTO in your perspective?
PTO in our perspective is PTO, process, technology, and organization. And this is the tripod that builds the whole organization. That you can't just invest in new technology without having the organization and the processes aligned with what the technology will give you as an added value. And so that this is what we are thinking of when it comes to the PTO.
Yeah, and Larry, from your perspective, like I said, we focused on sort of the 4 pillars of that. What are your thoughts on the 4 pillars of digital transformation? How does that relate to what he's talking about?
Well, Mark, we've been talking about exactly what Henrik is saying. The other one that we add in there sometimes is commitment, and that's part of the organization piece, right? Is that you have to have commitment from the top to the bottom that you're going to make a change. And one thing that we've always talked about is the value prop, and I think the value prop has changed now with the pandemic.
Yeah, we've many times explained it as belief, people, process, and technology, and this is just a different expression of that is process, technology, and organization. Hey,
the key point, and I think Henrik, you said this before, you got to have all 3 of those or all 4 of those to make effective change, right?
Yeah, he said it's like on a stool, right? If you have to have all 3 of those, right, Henrik?
Correct.
Yeah. So, Henrik, a couple of other follow-up questions, or let me jump this over to Oddvar if I could real quick. Oddvar, you focus a little bit about processes and how they're being aligned to technology. Is it, the first one of those 3, process, technology, and organization. One of your specialties is looking at process. What do you do looking at process yourself, Oddvar?
Airline is very often old-fashioned industry in many ways, and many of the processes are not efficient. They haven't been looked for years, many times. So there is a lot of job you can do to streamline them, to make it more lean and make them especially most adapted to the new tools, which is digitalization nowadays, most of it. To try to use the tools that are available in a good way and not using necessarily the old procedures on new kind of doing stuff with new tools.
Now, Oddvar, you come from a perspective of engineering. Hey, Larry, you got a long background in engineering, don't you?
Well, yeah, I do. 40 years at Boeing, essentially in the engineering organization. So, that kind of made me gray a little bit, I guess. But yeah.
Hey, well, in your experience, is that when we look at engineering, what are some of the key areas that we need to look at? Maybe like service bulletins or things like that. I mean, when we're looking at engineering, from your perspective, what are some of the key things that people should be looking at, Larry?
I think Oddvar really hit the nail on the head when he talked about slow to change. And engineering in a regulated industry, we've traditionally been really slow to change, and to be successful today, you're going to have to be a little more nimble than you've been in the past. Hey, I have a question, Henrik. As you guys have worked with airlines, over the past 2 or 3 months since March, have you seen a change in urgency or a change in how your customers might want to adopt new technology or digital transformation?
I think when it comes to new technologies, I think many airlines now have modern technology in terms of maintenance management systems or MRO systems. I think it's more or less how to utilize the current system to optimize your maintenance schedule and optimize your processes in relating to what Oddvar was stating, the asset resource and assessment. Everything is connected, and of course, everybody's talking about predictive maintenance, etc., and it's how you can utilize the current system together with subsystems or to optimize even further. And this is something that we have seen, that the system is there. Is only how to use or optimize the current system.
Okay. Yeah.
So you're saying that people, everybody has a existing IT portfolio. I mean, every single airline out there today has an MRO system of record, and they have an entire portfolio of IT applications. And what you're seeing, though, is that many times they're underutilized, is what you're basically trying to tell me?
I would say, yeah, I would say not underutilizing, but the system itself, the system and the processes, the PTO process and the technology is not aligned. So it is helping customers to understand what is required of the processes to utilize what the technology can or will provide them in the future.
So what do you mean by they're not aligned? What do you mean the process isn't aligned with the organization? Explain that to me a little bit more.
I think Oddvar was touching that point, is that many systems have been incorporated. The processes probably are not being aligned from the first time the system was implemented. Many times the system comes from a former legacy system that I tried to tweak into the current or in the new system. So many times it's more or less the discussion about, okay, when you introduce a system, is to take this huge discussion of what do we do with the processes in general, cross-functionally. And I can't emphasize enough about what is important of the cross-functional perspective when it comes to processes. As we all know, in aviation, especially in technical operations, everything is connected, from engineering, planning, logistics, the 145, everything is connected. So if you have a disconnect between those entities, you would have insufficient processes and of course an organization.
We're constantly seeing organizations, and this is always a problem, right? Is that organizations work in vertical silos, and we always see that maintenance doesn't necessarily work well with materials, and material doesn't work well with flight operations. And so, what kind of things do you do to help drive that cross-functional engagement?
It's when we are out talking to customers and potential customers, for that matter, is to make them aware of the importance of the cross-functional perspective, and often it is all about if you have a efficient transition or a change, you need to do an assessment of your other departments that are affecting your processes. And that could be network, it could be commercial, it could be everybody that is pointing towards your process again.
We all four of us, we've been in this industry for a long time, and let me just ask the really frank question: is that people know they need to do process optimization and improvement, but they don't do it. I mean, how do we change that? How do we get people to actually engage in optimization in their organization?
I think first of all is that when every change is hard, but it's nothing that constant as change in one way. But it's to have people understand that changes in terms of their own work, they will have more better work days. They would emphasize or focus on their main tasks, like engineering. You have highly skilled engineers, highly educated. Of course, they want to work with reliability. They want to work with improving the reliability on the aircraft, instead of being slowed down by heavy processes, etc. But it's to communicate, and I think it's all change is all about communication. Is to from top to bottom is having the change to be understood by each level, and why they need to do it.
Mark, there's an old cartoon, that says, ask who wants change, and everybody raises your hand. I want change. And then the next scene is who wants to change, and then nobody raises their hand. But I think what's different now is there's just an urgency, and and there's a purpose to change, and it's not just financial; it's survival.
Listen, I was encouraging people at the beginning of the broadcast to bring in questions if they had them, and I like to try to address them as they sort of flow or come through. And so I think I'm going to just bring up a quick question. We have somebody out there who asked a question, Fahad Rahman. He said, Henrik is raising an important issue that we at Norwegian Railways suffer with, missing optimization of maintenance process and low utilization of our MRO system. How much of a problem is that, Henrik?
I think it's a problem which is out there, and it's all about how the senior leadership is taking responsibility of looking at, okay, what's the main pain spot here, and of course having a MRO system, it wouldn't solve your problems. You need everything around it to be in place. And of course, at the end of the day, it's the senior leadership that needs to take ownership, and having the levels below, or people working around with like consultancy companies, to help them achieve what is required of them to make this change. And of course, what Fjeld is also raising here is something that we have seen. I wouldn't say it's a huge problem. I would say it's an issue, a challenge. I would rather say a challenge that needs to be addressed sooner rather than later.
The utilization of the systems. Yeah, I think we end up seeing that in a lot of places. Oddvar, you were talking about that with us a little bit in our pre-discussion, where you said that people kind of have this attitude of it's always been like this and it's difficult to make change. Oddvar, what are some of the things that you focus on in an organization from an engineering perspective when you're trying to look for opportunities for change? What are some of the factors that you're considering?
When it comes to especially airlines, which I've been working on most of my life, it's you can take an example. You have an electronic system for everything now. You have electronic task cards. You have everything is processed through the MRO system electronically. But even then, you print out a ton of paper and you sign it and you scan it back again and make it electronically. I mean, it's a disconnect here. You have a very good system, but they are not used at all in that respect.
So you brought up the idea of focusing more on electronic and on digital. Larry, you asked this question a little bit earlier about, are we seeing an increased propensity or movement toward digital? Larry, can you dig in with these guys a little bit about what's happening with respect to digital and how things are maybe changing a little bit?
Well, it's a good question, Mark, and a good point. I just think, again, in the past it's been more about financials and can I afford to change my processes, but now there's just more of an urgency to adopt new tools and to adopt processes. And I think, Oddvar, we've talked about this. Airlines around the world have these tools, but they don't use them to the full extent or reap the full value of some of the electronic tools that they have.
Yep. And Larry, for those of you that might know Larry's background, Larry was involved in Toolbox at Boeing. And for those of you that may or may not know that term, Toolbox was the system which was basically used to manage documentation and materials and a lot of things like that, at Boeing. And so, Larry, you helped with the implementation of some of their mobile, tools and things within Boeing, right?
Well, actually, Oddvar, we had the opportunity to work with you to implement the delivery of maintenance information on a mobile device, the right information at the right time, at the to the right place, and that was fun to do with you guys at Norwegian. But I guess it kind of goes back to I just would like you guys' opinion again on what's going to happen. I think things are changing, and do you guys think that we're going to see faster adoption of new technology, or is it more people and processes? Or Henrik, how do you see the priorities as we move forward over the next 6 months?
That's a good question. But I think when it comes to the companies now being in a position where they are now, I think they're probably sitting there and asking themselves the question: so what should we do? What shall we do? And
Yeah, right.
and I think that at the end of the day, it's more or less the senior leadership needs to point out a new direction for the companies. But it will be hard because, trying, from a subdivision like, for instance, technical operations or others, trying to understand, okay, what is required from us to follow that new vision or strategy. And if it's difficult, so I think more or less that is down to, back again, that many of the companies have a system which is good, probably, and in terms of that, sit down and go through that. Okay, what's required of the process? What needs to be changed? And our experience is that often these discussions are not in usual operations, not being discussed. But now use the time to ask those questions.
I think that's a great point. We have airlines are beginning to fly again, but we have a large resource of people that are not employed full time. So here's a great opportunity to use that knowledge.
Now we've seen some operations that have been really struggling, of course, worldwide. Especially because of the economic downturn in aviation. But some of the airlines all have different operating models, and we had a little bit of a discussion previously, Henrik, about the cost basis for some of the Scandinavian airlines. And the reality is that some of them are struggling right now. Can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, what can they do to address that? I mean, how do you change something when you have a cost basis that's too high? How do maintenance costs come into play? Can you talk about that a little bit?
It's difficult to talk about what the different companies are thinking of right now, but I would say that the cost base, of course, in Scandinavia is high, and of course, having operation based in Scandinavia, it gives you a higher cost level, of course. But it's more or less having efficient organization would also help you to lower the overall cost. And there is different operating models. You can do it in-house, you can do it outsourcing, etc. It's different from different companies. But I think it's down to having control of your operation. Having control of the change, having control of the operation will at the end of the day give you a lower cost. And of course, that the engine contracts, airframe contracts, is expensive, and having that process, learning from your operation, take that or wisdom into account and make your contracts better, make your operation better, etc.
Who would be your key customers? From an aviation consultancy, who would be a customer you'd be going after? Airlines, MROs, who?
In terms of AFRY Aviation and Transport, we are willing with airlines in Scandinavia. We do also have other transport customers in railway, in trains, in bus. So we are covering the whole transport sector, and that's something which is, for us, is very interesting, because we only see one issue in an airline, we see them also in other sectors. So we have a broad customer base.
Yeah,
I think that's an interesting view. Is I think we talk here a lot, Mark, about airplanes and people. Are people going to get on an airplane again? But are people going to get on a bus again? Are they going to get in an Uber again? Are they going to get on a train again? They're all really creating that confidence that people can travel across the travel value stream, if you will, is our challenge.
Yeah, I had an opportunity not too long ago to spend some time in Oslo and some of the surrounding areas in Norway. And I have to admit, I was very impressed with the efficiency of the operations, whether they be air or rail, and this the transport sector. And so, I'll just say, Henrik, is that I believe that people in Oslo like yourselves and in Scandinavia have done an outstanding job of addressing efficiency. And I would think that applying this more broadly to companies, and this knowledge that's been acquired and this excellence in this area has tremendous opportunity. I mean, I've seen some really quality implementations. And so, I think you have a great opportunity because of the mindset toward quality of applying that into transportation today. Yeah. So anyway, so 121 operators, 145 operators, MROs, trains, planes, those kind of things. You're operating all the way across the transportation industry then, right, Henrik?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's really good. I see you have tremendous opportunity, to do that there today. So as we continue to move on, let me just comment to people again out there that are watching. And if you have more questions, go ahead and submit them. We'll try to address them. But let me bring something up here. Is upcoming? I understand that you have a webinar that you're doing, and it's actually tomorrow, right? Is that correct?
Tomorrow at 9:30 CET. Yeah.
Tomorrow 9:30 CET. And what is the purpose for that webinar? What will you be talking about and discussing?
Actually, we will be discussing a little bit what we have been talking about today, and that's to utilize a maintenance management system called AMOS. There's a lot of airlines and of course customers of ours that utilize or use the AMOS system. And tomorrow we're going to talk actually about the reliability capabilities that AMOS can provide, and it's to broaden a little bit about the experience of how to use it, what they can utilize in the different modules that AMOS provides, because it's all connected. And it's one is to broaden the horizon for whoever that wants to participate in this webinar about the capabilities that AMOS holds.
And it kind of ties back to what you guys were saying earlier, is that many times people have tools and they could be utilized more efficiently or more completely than what they are today. Is that what it focuses on some?
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Okay, great, good. And if someone wanted to participate in that webinar tomorrow, it's a little bit different of a format. It's more detailed and it's specifically toward that subject. But how do they register for it, or how do they engage in that?
They can actually go to the AFRY web page, and under the aviation sector, they can go into the webinar for reliability capabilities of AMOS, and they can press register and they're in.
Okay, great. Well, listen, I tell you what we'll do for those of you that are watching. If you want to attend that tomorrow, when we're done with this broadcast, I'll post the link in the comments, and you guys can go to that link and you can engage. Hey, it should be a good discussion, because if you're an AMOS operator, or if you are wanting to know anything about better utilizing your own MRO system within aviation, it'll be a good discussion to focus on that subject. Thanks.
Definitely.
Yeah, good.
Well, and I would also add, Mark, and I think you said this, Henrik, is the value in today's world of mobile, and how that's just got to be the way that people do maintenance in the future, is using these mobile devices.
Yeah.
Good. Hey, let me shift to one other question. Is that one of the things that we try to do in having these broadcasts with people is we try to leverage the knowledge that we have. Listen, we have people all around the world that Larry and I have been interviewing with so much experience in aviation. And I like to leverage that to be able to bring out, advice from people, then what their advice is on how companies can accelerate recovery in aviation during this time. So I want to start, Henrik, with you, and I wanted to ask you a question. Is that if you're a viewer out there today, and if you're a company that's thinking to yourself, what do I need to do to accelerate recovery in aviation? What would your advice be to that person as a leader in aviation? What is your advice, Henrik?
My advice is to use the current situation and do a thorough analysis of your current state, and of course the future state of where you want to be in the next couple of years. And of course it's difficult, especially in these times, to know where you're going to be in 3 to 5 years. But it's all about starting to go through your own backyard in terms of, again, the process technology or an organization, and have an open mind in terms of change. Communicate with leaders and employees about what is required, having the organization to be a part of the change, to have them to come up with ideas of how to change, what we need to change. I think that's the key. And of course, every change can't be realized without a good communication from each level in the organization.
Hey, and a follow-up question, Oddvar, at a more detailed level, is it your area of specialty is engineering? All right. If I were to ask you that same question, if I'm a leader in engineering, and if I'm saying what could or should I be doing right now to help accelerate my recovery or to put my company in a better position from the standpoint of a cost basis, what would your advice be to people watching today in engineering, that what should we be doing to help accelerate recovery during this time?
But I'm sure that there are a lot of areas which you can improve when it comes to engineering and planning and the whole process. As I said earlier, we are doing a lot of old-fashioned stuff. There is still a lot of things you can do to go into and to have the same level of quality and safety, even higher, because you can get rid of a lot of manual processes, and you can have a much more efficient operation and procedure if you really take your time to dig into them and streamline them.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, let's start drawing this conversation to a close here. Larry, I want to throw this back to you. Is that at the beginning of the broadcast today, Henrik talked about process technology and organization and how important that is. Tell us again, kind of your perspective on digital transformation and what are those 4 pillars of importance in digital transformation?
The importance is they all have to work together, that you can't just focus on technology, or you can't just focus on the organization, or you have to look at commitment, technology, people, and the organization all together as one ecosystem, if you will, to really implement a change. What's different here is that we have a crisis that also provides a motivation for change.
Yeah, I've found that over the years that, I've told people that we have an opportunity to save a lot of money or to be able to increase revenue. And many times our constant state operations cause us to just sit and not make the changes that we need to. But because we have certain events that are driving change, like maybe the need to drive a change in our economic cost basis, or maybe we need to drive more digital in the process, this is your opportunity to make changes in your organization. And the implementation of digital and the implementation of process improvement, has the ability to make an impact in our operations. And so, believing in what you're doing, people being engaged, and the process and the technology, all those 4 things being put together can drive digital transformation and to drive us into a digital world. And now is the time to do it. And you guys from AFRY are really making a difference all around the world in a lot of different sectors. And in the aviation sector specifically, you're positioned really well to help people to be successful in doing that. And I see the background and the skills you guys have. And I'm looking forward to being able to see what you guys can do and help people out to be successful during this time. Gentlemen, I want to give you a last chance. Henrik, any last thoughts for anybody out there today?
No, I would say that digitalization will not solve every single issue or your challenges out there. Again, you're referencing Larry again. It's all connected. Process, technology, and organization is connected, and of course, the change management is utterly important to emphasize on when you do these changes. And of course, AFRY could assist with the knowledgeable engineers, very well known to the aviation sector and also the transport sector.
So if people want to reach out to you and if they want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you? Is it by email or by LinkedIn, or what? How should they get in touch with you?
LinkedIn is perfect in mail.
Okay, and is it okay if they reach out to you at this email address here?
Sure.
Okay, well, very good. So listen, if you'd like to get in touch and continue this conversation with Henrik and Oddvar, reach out to them on LinkedIn or reach out to them at this email address. If you want to get in touch with Larry and I, you can always reach out to us on LinkedIn, or just go into Google and search #DigitalAircraft, and you'll find out all about what it is that we're doing. Hey, we are very excited about our ability to engage together, one another, with people, and to be able to accelerate the recovery in aviation. That's the whole purpose for what we do, is to continue this conversation, get some good ideas out there, leverage the knowledge that's out there in the industry, and help one another to move forward in our recovery in aviation. So I want to thank you guys, Larry, Henrik, Oddvar. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
I appreciate your perspective, your company, and from your region of the world. And I wanted to ask people to continue to join these broadcasts. We generally do them on Wednesdays and Fridays, but sometimes the timing works better. They had this webinar coming up tomorrow, and so we wanted to let you know about it and let you see some of the things they're doing. Join that webinar that they have. I'm going to put a link into the comments here, and so you'll be able to do that, register for that tomorrow. And with that, I will say thank you, gentlemen, for joining today, and I'm looking forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
I'll close the broadcast as I always do, which says fair winds and following seas to you, and have a great day. Bye.